So we've had so many clients throughout the years express feeling completely controlled by food. They share experiences ranging from knowing there's a certain food in their house and having to avoid going home, to feeling like they can't even drive by certain restaurants because they're worried that they're not able to control themselves, and they'll stop and feel out of control and maybe engage in other behaviors that they're not wanting to do. So many of the clients we all work with feel they are indeed addicted to food. So we could just end this conversation here because, again, that is what matters the most is what their experience is. Validating that is a really important part of the process. It is potentially an issue that interferes in one's life, and we need to honor that experience. But the reality is that having a binary of real or not real can get in the way of the client experience. So we want to reframe this entirely by focusing on what many call process addiction or behavioral addiction. So this slide just really lays out substance addiction clearly as being addicted to caffeine, alcohol, hallucinogenics, prescription drugs, anything that you typically associate with being, substance addiction. And then this other part of the slide is behavioral. So healthcare providers in the medical community now call substance addiction substance use disorder. The American Psychiatric Association's DSM has concrete diagnostic criteria for substance use disorders. And these drugs, anything substance-wise, there's a very clear interaction of what happens in our brains and our bodies when we take these substances. And this other part of the slide is more of a behavior, a whole experience that can become sort of addictive. And I think in our work, I can speak for myself, I've seen this a lot in feeling like this whole process of, potentially a binge and a purge, that whole experience can become addictive. So can exercise, dieting, and then obviously the other pieces on the slide are not related to the work necessarily around food, but gambling, shopping, shoplifting, having sex, pornography, the use of the internet. And these two delineations are very different from one another. And we felt it was important to categorize it this way because people describing feeling addicted to food do feel like it can mirror the substance addiction. And we want to kind of move towards but it's a process, it's a behavior. And that makes it more possible for us to, as clinicians, to help them intervene in that process and provide more stability long-term to help them feel like they can, engage with these. We're going to get to the food addiction part too a little bit more, but engage with foods that they're going to see at the grocery store or at the restaurant. People are going to see these foods on menus that they feel addicted to. And it's not like a cocaine or an alcohol where you can totally abstain. It's very different. So I hope that's making sense. I'm going to explain it a little bit more. But it's potentially harmful and problematic to talk about food as a substance addiction. And there's lots of research being done around the addictive nature of ultra processed foods. But when we pathologize food that is high in fat, sugar, and salt, we potentially run the risk of creating phobic feelings towards food that isn't deemed safe. And this is in direct contrast with the notion of the approach that Kate mentioned we take with our disordered eating clients is all foods fit, that there's no good and bad food potentially, but we run the risk of inciting more disordered eating when we talk about food in this way. So obviously, when we're talking about any kind of substance abuse or food or process addiction, we want to try to help our clients get under the hood of the car. These behaviors are ultimately coping strategies, and getting the chance to unpack what leads to these behaviors is where a lot of the work lies. But obviously, there's a distinct difference between eating and food and other substance or behavioral addictions. You can't refrain from eating. So again, I mentioned you can totally abstain from alcohol and different other substances, but ultimately food is something that you have to engage in the world. And just deeming it addictive would eliminate entire food groups and make a lot of instances where we have to interact with the world and with people really complicated. I think I saw sugar popping up, and I can just really, I'm in no way a scientist, but just kind of mention that the work that we do, the All Foods Fit, does include sugar. And we'll sort of talk a little bit more about building balance and in kind of in a way, but that's also in our course too. The idea is that when you deem a food as bad, it becomes a really shameful experience to eat it, which just perpetuates that process of feeling like I can't have it, then I do it, and then I feel shame. Whereas if we sort of try to work towards neutralizing foods, we can potentially build more sustainable and healthy relationships with them.